The Surge was an interesting game. While I never did finish the title, I played through maybe half of it in the lead up to release and consider it to be one of the better entries in the genre. It does a lot of things right, but nothing particularly amazing, so it's no surprise that I ended up being distracted by something else before too long. However, Deck 13 has now released the sequel and was kind enough to supply me with a review copy, through which I played over the past week and have been quite eager to share with all of you. I think the stark contrast between the packaging on the two titles gives an appropriate impression of just how massively expanded this sequel is over the original. Immediately upon starting a new game, The Surge 2 presents one of my favourite new features, full character customization. Male and female designs are available, and on top of a huge variety of physical attributes, we can also select from one of a few items of base clothing to wear. Here we can also choose a backstory, which has no impact on skill, and just influences some of the items we'll be able to purchase from vendors later in the game. From here we get a pre-rendered cutscene to set up the story going forward. The Surge 2 begins with us waking up in a prison hospital, having an extremely limited moveset, but equipped with a set of defibrillators which can be used as weapons, and also defensively. Combat involves locking onto an enemy, but also flicking the right analog stick to select which body part specifically we'd like to attack. Most enemies have armor covering at least a few limbs, so this system allows us to directly target vulnerable areas. It's an extra layer of decision making that goes into engaging with each enemy, but it's implemented so well that it feels natural. Before long we find the game's first med bay, and it is here that our character is equipped with a mechanical exoskeleton called a rig, as well as receives the clothing option we chose during character creation.
Rig installation complete.
With this, the combat system is expanded, and we're able to not only target individual body parts as before, but we can consume battery power to perform finishing moves on weakened areas, cutting individual parts from the enemy. Through this, we can collect pieces of armor or weapons that we see on enemy characters. Almost everything we see worn or wielded by an enemy can be taken for ourselves, and at the med bay we have a checklist screen showing any partial or completed armor sets we've found. This means I'd regularly find myself checking my list before engaging with an enemy and then specifically targeting the body part which would reward me with the last item I needed for my collection. Combat obviously features a system of attacks. We have horizontal and vertical swings, and these can be chained together for combo attacks. Conversely, we have a defensive block, which mitigates most attack damage to little advantage. However, while blocking, we can flick the right analog stick to perform a quick directional block. This costs a lot of stamina, but if timed perfectly as we're about to be hit, we'll actually deflect the enemy attack and create a powerful opening for us to strike. An implant can be equipped which will show us the direction of oncoming attacks, as well as some indication of the timing involved. Boss characters often require multiple successful deflections to be staggered, which leads to these amazing moments when we finally master a full parry on a complex series of attacks. I can't speak highly enough of how good the directional blocking system feels once we really get the hang of it. This is, however, entirely optional. and there were times where I fell back on simply dodging and blocking my way through some fights when I just wasn't getting a feel for how the attacks flowed together. The range of weapons we find throughout the game is absolutely massive. Spears, hammers, swords, punching gloves, and all sorts of strange contraptions. We are also equipped with a combat drone which is capable of a variety of ranged attacks. Asynchronous multiplayer also exists, where messages will be left on the ground by other players for us to see, and we can leave our own by using a spray can attached to the combat drone. We can also hide a small banner somewhere in the game world, and other players can try to find it if they're nearby. The more well hidden it is, the greater reward we receive after an hour has passed. One small treat is the fact that all of this online functionality works without a PlayStation Plus subscription, unlike any of the other games in the same genre. So we have this wonderful combat system fueled by a checklist of armor to collect, as well as a huge array of weapons to steal from enemies. But what about the world in which it all takes place? The Surge 2 is a Metroidvania open world game. When we first step foot into Jericho City, we are immediately met with a number of paths which we cannot yet take. Some are signposted with certain items being needed, while others are inconspicuous shortcuts through which we'll return after many more hours of gameplay. There's no central hub area and no way to warp between medbays, so a lot of legwork is involved throughout. The game manages to successfully pull off those key moments where we're exploring across some great distance, feeling like we're so far away from where we began, but then we turn a corner, unlock a door, and find we've suddenly opened a new path back to a familiar area from long before. And in these situations, we often return with new abilities allowing us to take entirely new paths branching out from otherwise well-traversed areas. The environments across which the game takes place are also incredibly diverse. Jericho City itself presents a futuristic urban environment, the open nature of which really complements the overworld's non-linear design. But at each corner, and above and below the city, we find such wonderful variety that I always enjoyed taking my time wandering through the scenery. Something we can't go without mentioning is the fact that The Surge 2 is a hard game. Death comes quick and repeatedly, but there's no actual punishment for failure, and the many shortcuts we discover along the way make retrying tricky challenges an overall trivial experience. In fact, when returning to the last place that we died, our previous corpse acts as a healing totem to make repeated attempts slightly less punishing. This is optional though, and you can simply collect your corpse off the ground to retrieve any currency you dropped on the last attempt, and the healing effect ends. The variety in boss encounters also ranges from colossal monsters and robots to simple one-on-one fights with equally matched humans, including a few optional ones along the way. I even managed to defeat one boss using stealth, without actually engaging with it, so that was a nice surprise. Of course, all of this is tied together by a storyline, throughout which we encounter a large number of NPCs scattered across towns and the overworld.
Another fortune seeker, eh? I'll take a good look around. This place is a testament to our government's hubris.
One of these days...
Many of these characters will have optional side quests for us, which are subsequently tracked in our quest log, making it easy to remember what we're meant to be doing at any given time. Most of the side character dialogue is poorly written and often borders on nonsense.
What the? That's mine! Give it back, like right now! This was a token of our love, you know? It's all I have left now. I'm a broken shell of a man.
Thankfully, everything regarding the main storyline is good enough not to be unpleasant.
Only one survivor. I can feel a pulse.
Times when the game isn't taking itself seriously, and instead resorts to an attempt at comedy, while never actually being funny, are much easier to digest and carry a lot of charm regardless.
Yes, I really am. And no, despite my shredded torso, perfectly chiseled jawline, and brilliantly glistening teeth, I'm not really a superhero. I only played him in 8 movies. Oh, and yes, I am still on the dating market.
I played through The Surge 2 on PlayStation 4 Pro, and although the game does an acceptable job of keeping up a high frame rate, there are some severe texture issues on the console. I was often unsure if I was meant to be waiting for textures to finish loading, or if that was just the way they were supposed to look. When I was totally immersed in the game's beautiful world, these things really weren't an issue, but there were a few moments where I wanted to stop and take some screenshots and realised that things weren't quite as impressive as they could be. Thankfully, the game is also available for home computers running Steam, where technical issues can easily be mitigated with raw hardware power. Regardless of platform, the game holds up incredibly well and is overall a fantastic title. Coupled with a new game plus that changes up so much that it's basically a mandatory part of any playthrough, The Surge 2 is an absolutely fantastic overall package, and I'm personally far from done exploring everything the game has to offer. Regardless, I wanted to share with you all what I thought about the game, so I appreciate you taking the time to watch. If you did manage to enjoy this video, feel free to subscribe to keep up with any other things I happen to be playing with from time to time, and either way, thank you for watching, I'll see you next time.